All right. All right, all right, all right. Okay. This, I'm going to get into Josephus about the oracles of the prophets concerning the destruction of Jerusalem. All right. Yes. It was prophesied, all right, the destruction of Jerusalem. That's important. So if there's a prophecy concerning the destruction of Jerusalem, the holy, all right, well, what do you think? It's gonna you don't think that there's a prophecy of destruction for, we like to say, America, Babylon. Yeah, the wicked city, the bloody city that was built on blood. Okay, there's oracles of the prophets concerning destruction of Jerusalem, right? And you don't think the Most High has a prophecy against this nation, right? And we're in a time of war, all right? So let's get the oracles of the prophets concerning the destruction of Jerusalem, and let's hear about it, all right? And let's have understanding about it. Then I also want to show you signs that were given about the destruction. All right, there were signs uh, shown before the destruction. All right, so let me get that. All right, I think it's important that we hear this. I haven't had much to say lately because everything is going like it should. So there were signs that appeared before the destruction of Jerusalem as well. And you need to know. You need to hear this stuff. All right. The detailed account from Josephus letting you know what was going on, what was going down. All right. A lot of times we hurt ourselves. All right. So we're in a wars of the Jews, the Israelites, wars of the Jews. All right. Uh, Book 4, chapter 6, I think paragraph 3 is how you do his book. 463. All right. So I'm in book 4, chapter 6, paragraph 3. All right. And it says, brothers and sisters, and now the commanders joined in their approbation of what Vespasian had said. And it was soon discovered, it was found out how wise an opinion he had given, and indeed many there were of the Jews that deserted every day and fled away. They ran away from the zealots, although their flight was very difficult. Their escape was very difficult, since they had guarded every passage out of the city, and slew everyone that was caught. They killed everyone that was caught at them, and as taking it for granted, they were going over to the Romans. Yet did he who gave them money get clear off, while he only that gave them none was voted a traitor. So the upshot was this, that the rich purchased their flight by money. This is what's going to happen. Pastors buy money. Celebrities buy money. Right? While none but the poor were killed. Along all the roads, also vast numbers of dead bodies lay in heaps and piles, and even many of those that were so zealots in deserting at length chose rather to die within the city of Jerusalem, for the hopes of burial made death in their own city, appearing of the two less terrible to them. But these zealots came at last to that degree of barbarity as not to bestow a burial either on those dead in the city of Jerusalem or on those that lay along the roads of Jerusalem, but as if they had made an agreement to cancel both the laws of their country and the laws of nature, and at the same time that they defiled men with their wicked actions, they would pollute the divinity itself also. They left the dead bodies to petrify under the sun, and the same punishment was allowed it given to such as buried any. As to those that deserted, ran away, flee, which was no other than death, while he that granted the favor of a grave to another would presently stand in need of a grave himself. To say all in a word, no other gentle passion was so entirely lost among them as mercy. For what were the greatest objects of pity did most of all irritate these wretches, and they transferred their rage from the living to those that had been killed, and from the dead to the living. Now the terror was so very great that he who survived called them that were first dead happy, as being at rest already, as did those that were under torture in the prisons, declared that upon this comparison, those that lay unburied were the happiest. These men therefore trampled upon all the laws of man and laughed at the laws of the Most High. And for the oracles of the prophets, they ridiculed them as the tricks of jugglers. Still did these prophets foretell many things concerning the rewards of virtue and punishments of vice, which when these zealots violated, they occasioned the fulfilling of those very prophecies belonging to their own country. For there was a certain ancient oracle of those men that the city should then be taken and the sanctuary burnt by right of war. How? It says the sanctuary burnt by right of war when a sedition, a riot, should invade, a rebellion should invade the Jews, and their own hands should pollute the temple of the Most High. So they predicted that that the sedition should invade the Jews, and their own hands should pollute the temple of God, should defile the temple of the Most High. And I'll read on. Now while these zealots did not quiet disbelief, so they weren't quiet in their disbelief, they were boastful in their disbelief. These predictions, they're saying it ain't gonna happen, they ain't gonna happen. These predictions, they made themselves the instruments, they made themselves the tools of their accomplishment. All right. So I'll read the note. It says, this prediction that the city of Jerusalem should then be taken and the sanctuary, the church, burnt by right of war, when a sedition should invade the Jews, and their own hands should pollute that temple. All right. It says, when anyone should begin to slay his countrymen in the city. So you go to book 6, chapter 2, paragraph 1. It says, when one should begin to slay, that means kill his own countrymen in the city. So people are going to start killing each other in the city, Israel. And in the note, it says it's missing in our present copies of the Old Testament. On the Old Testament page, it says page 104 to 12. But this prediction, as Josephus well remarks here, though with other predictions of the prophets, it was now laughed at by the seditious. It was laughed at by the rioters and the revolters. It was a joke to them that their own countrymen would kill each other, or that the war would begin um, uh, uh, by the Jews uh, polluting their own temple, defiling their own temple by killing their own countrymen in the temple. All right. So they laughed at it, the revolters. All right. Um, and was by their very means soon exactly fulfilled. They fulfilled that prophecy. All right. Um, and so that's what I have for that. I could go on with the note, but it goes into other things. But again, I'm going to read it. It says here that these men therefore trampled upon all the laws of men, and they laughed at the laws of God. Who did that? The Romans did. And for the oracles of the prophets, they ridiculed them as the tricks of jugglers, that they were just tricking the people, using verses out of context and all of that. It says, still did these prophets foretell, they told many things concerning the reward of virtue and punishments of vice, which when these zealots violated, they occasioned the fulfilling of these very prophecies belonging to their own country. For there was a certain ancient oracle of those men, that the city should be taken and the sanctuary burnt by right of war. When a sedition, a revolt, should invade the Jews, and their own hand should pollute the temple of the Most High. Now, while these zealots did not disbelieve these predictions, they didn't quietly disbelieve the predictions. They were boastful. They were loud. We don't believe this crap. That's not going to happen. They made themselves the instruments, the tools of fulfilling, of accomplishing that goal. All right. They actually fulfilled it. All right. All right. So the summary of that chapter 6, it says, how the Zealots, when they were freed from the Idumeans, Edom, slew a great many more of the citizens, and how Vespasian dissuaded the Romans, when they were very earnest to march against the Jews from proceeding in the war at that time. All right. Okay. Now, let's get 4:10. Okay, let's get 4:10. 4:10. Book 4, chapter 10, paragraph 7. All right. Okay. It says, so So Vespasian, Vespasian's good fortune succeeded to his wishes everywhere, and the public affairs were, for the greatest part, already in his hands, his power, upon which he considered that he had not arrived at the government without divine providence. That means he didn't arrive as the leader of the government without the Most High's allowance, but that a righteous kind of fate had brought the empire under his power. For as he called to mind the other signals, other signs, which had been a great many everywhere, that foretold he should obtain the government, so did he remember what Josephus had said to him when he ventured to foretell his coming to the empire. So he remembered that Josephus, just like Joseph could tell Pharaoh's dream, Josephus, he had predicted him becoming ruler of the empire. All right. So he told the future of Vespasian ruling the empire while Nero was alive. So if it comes to pass, if what you say come to pass, you're a prophet, right? Anyway, he foretold this, the future, when Nero was alive ruling the empire. So he was much concerned that this man was still in bonds. Vespasian was concerned that Josephus was in chains. All right. He then called for Mancinus together with his other commanders and friends, and in the first place he informed them what a valiant, brave man Josephus had been, and what great hardships he had made him undergo in the attack of Jatapta. After that, he related those predictions of his. He told of the predictions of his. I'm not going to go into this note, but this note is really good. It says, as Daniel was preferred by Darius and Cyrus on account of his having foretold the destruction of Babylonian monarchy by their means and the consequent exhaustion of the Medes and Persians, Daniel 5 and 6, rather as Jeremiah, when he was a prisoner, was set at freedom and honorable, treated by Nebuzaradan at the command of Nebuchadnezzar on the account of his having foretold the destruction of Jerusalem by the Babylonians in Jeremiah 40:1-7. So was our Josephus set at liberty, free, and honorably treated on the reason of his having foretold the advancement of Vespasian and Titus to the Roman Empire. All these are most eminent instances of interposition of divine care. It was the care of the Most High, and of the certain of divine predictions in the great revolutions of the four monarchies. Several such alike examples that there are, both in the sacred and other histories, as in the case of Joseph in Egypt and of Judah, the high priest, in the days of Alexander the Great. All right. So he predicted the future, and it saved his head. So, after that, he related those predictions of his, which he had then suspected as fictions. So Vespasian thought it was mythology, was lie, was false, and suggested out of the fear he was in, but which had by time been demonstrated to be divine. It was demonstrated to Vespasian that it was divine. It came from the Most High. It is a shameful thing that this man, said he, that this man who have foretold my coming to the empire beforehand in the future and been the minister of a divine message. He was a relator of a honest, a true, a holy message to me. It was from the Most High. And it should still be retained, that he should still be retained in the condition of a captive, a slave, a prisoner. So he called for Josephus and commanded that he should be set at liberty, set free. Whereupon the commanders promised themselves glorious things from this requital, forgiveness, Vespasian made to a stranger, because Vespasian is a Roman, Josephus is an Israelite historian. Okay, so they said, "Oh, well, we gonna get something." He released him. We gonna get some really nice, handsome rewards. Titus was then present with his father. Titus is Vespasian's father, I think, and said, "O father, it is but just, it is right that the scandal of a prisoner," or he said, "it is but just, it is righteous that the scandal should be taken off Josephus, together with his iron chains. For if we do not barely loose his bonds, his chains, but cut them to pieces," we should cut his handcuffs, his ball and chain to pieces, "he will be like a man that have never been bound at all." It'll be like we never imprisoned him at all. The one that foretold that you will become the emperor. So they freed Josephus. For that is the unusual method as to such as have been bound without a cause. All right? Because sometimes when you bound without a reason, you just stuck there. But he foretold the future. This advice was agreed to by Vespasian also. So there came a man in and cut the chain to pieces, while Josephus received this testimony of his integrity for a reward, and was moreover esteemed. He was encouraged a person of credibility as to futurities, telling the future also. All right. Um, okay, so they released him. All right. All right. So let's get six. Oh, I'm holding it already. 6-2. 6-2-1. 6-2-1. All right, 6-2-1. Book 6 of the Wars of the Jews, chapter 2, verse 1. How Titus gave orders to demolish the tower of Antonia, and then persuaded Josephus. See, he persuaded Josephus to encourage the Jews again to a surrender. All right, Josephus was an Israelite. They trying to persuade him, get him, all right, to encourage, ask the Jews to a surrender. All right, let's read it. All right, and now Titus gave orders to his soldiers that were with him to dig up the foundations. That means the beginning of the Tower of Antonia, the root, and make him a ready passage for his army to come up, while he himself had Josephus brought to him. Titus had come here, for he had informed that on that very day, which was the 7th day of Panemus Tammuz, the sacrifice called the daily sacrifice had failed. All right. So let's look at the note. All right. This was a very remarkable day indeed, the 7th of Tammuz, AD 70, when, according to Daniel's prediction, 606 years before, the Romans, in half a week, caused the sacrifice and oblation to stop. Daniel 9:27, for from the month of February, AD 66, about which time Vespasian entered on this war, to this very time was just 3 years and a half. All right. Um, There's some more. It says, see Bishop Lloyd's table of chronology published by M. Marshall on this year. Nor is it to be omitted what very nearly confirms that this time of war, the 4 years before the war began, was somewhat about 7 years, 5 months before the destruction of Jerusalem. All right. Forget the note. Let's read it again. Titus gave orders to the soldiers that were with him to dig up the foundation, the beginning, the start of the Tower of Antonia, the bottom of it, and make him a ready passage for his army, a highway to come up, while he himself had Josephus brought to him. All right. He had him brought to him, right? He had him brought to him, for he had been informed that on that very day, that hour, that age, that time, which is the day of Tammuz, on the 7th day, the sacrifice called the daily sacrifice had failed. The daily bread had failed and had not been offered to the Most High for need, it says, want of man. There was a need of man to give, to offer it. And that the people were grievously troubled at it. The people were sad about it and commanded him to say the same things to John. So Titus commanded him to say these things to John that he had said before, that if he had any malicious inclination for fighting, he might come out with as many of his men as he pleased, in order to fight without the danger of destroying either the city or the temple. So Titus told him, come on out, bring out your people to fight, John. We can fight outside of the city. He was asking Josephus to tell him, let's do it outside of the city. Right? So there will be no danger of either his city, Jerusalem, or the temple of Jerusalem to be destroyed. But that he desired he would not defile the temple, nor thereby offend against the Most High. This is a heathen saying this, Israel, that he might, if he pleased, offer the gifts which were now discontinued, stopped by any of the Jews whom he should pitch upon, fight upon, or go against. Upon this, Josephus stood in such a place where he might be heard. So he stood up somewhere high where he could be heard, not by John alone, the leader of the Jews at this time, but by many more, and then declared to them. So he announced to them what Caesar had given him in charge to do. And this in the Hebrew language. All right? In the Hebrew language. There's a note here. It says, the same that in the New Testament is always so called, and was then the common language of the Jews in Judea, which was the Syriac dialect. But we know it was the Hebrew. So he stood up somewhere high. He spoke to the leader of the Jews at that time for Caesar in Hebrew language. So he earnestly prayed to them, Josephus did, to spare their own city and to prevent that fire that was justly ready to seize upon the temple. Right? Sound like Kanye West, huh? Or somebody like that, right? Anyway, I'm just putting it into modern times. So Josephus stood up in the Hebrew language. He earnestly prayed to them and spare to spare their city and to stop the fire that was just it was ready to seize upon the temple. All right, and to offer their usual sacrifices to the Elohim, the Most High Power, to the Most High therein in the temple. At these words of his a great sadness and silence was observed. They were sad because he was recognized. He was kind of, what do you want to say, famous. He had some renown. He had some respect among the Israelites. And at the words of, he brought great sadness and silence. And silence was observed among the people. So they had a moment of silence. They were shocked that he was saying this. But the tyrant himself cast many reproaches. So Caesar or Titus, right there, Caesar was Titus. I forgot that's a title. He was probably like, motherfucker Josephus. He was cursing. He was saying whatever. But the tyrant himself he threw many reproaches on Josephus. Tell them motherfuckers, hey, da 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 da. Upon Josephus with implications, it's saying, hey, with death threats, hey, if these mothers don't do what I'm telling them to do, da 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 da. Josephus standing up there trying to say something, trying to tell the people, look, your temple gonna be burnt, y'all gonna be destroyed, everything gonna be bad. All right. So let me read this again. It says, but the tyrant himself cast many reproaches upon Josephus with imprecations, but also, and at the end, added this with it all, that he did never fear the taking of the city. So now Titus is like, I never had any fear of taking this city because it was God's own city. I didn't have no fear because it was God's own city. I'm coming to get this city. I'm going to destroy it. In answer to which Josephus said this. Josephus replied to him with a loud voice, to be sure, you have kept this city wonderfully pure for God's sake, for God's benefit. The temple also continues entirely unpolluted, defiled, nor has you been guilty of any disrespect against him, for whose assistance you hopest, for whose assistance you have belief for or hope for, he still receives his custom sacrifices, gifts. Vile wretch that you are, you evil demon, if anyone should deprive you of your daily food, you would esteem him to be an enemy to you. But you hopest to have the Most High for your supporter in this war, whom you have deprived of his everlasting worship. You've taken away his everlasting worship, right? But not allowing them to go up and worship. No. He was allowing them to worship. He's replying to the Israelites, if I'm not mistaken. Let me go back. Darn it. That he did not fear taking of the city because it was God's own city. In answer to which Josephus said this with a loud voice, to be sure, you have kept the city wonderfully pure for the Most High's benefit. The temple also continues entirely unpolluted, nor have you been guilty of any impiety against him, for whose assistance you ask for. He still receives his accustomed gifts. Vile wretch that you are, if any sacrifices, if anyone should deprive you of any daily food, the daily sacrifices, you would encourage him to be an enemy to you. But you hopest to have the Most High for your support, your help in this war, whom you have taken of his everlasting worship, deprived, stopped for everlasting worship, and you imputest those sins to the Romans. you put these sins upon the Romans, who to this very time take care to have our laws observed. The Romans, see, this is the stuff I'm talking about. Stop with the political correctness and all that. Israel, you got to know what you did, and you got to know what they did, because you're going to be held accountable, especially if your ancestors, Israel, your ancestor Rome. It says, and you imputed those sins to the Romans. You placed the sins upon the Romans, who to this very time take care to have our laws observed, done, and almost compel these sacrifices. They almost make you do these sacrifices to, or have the sacrifices to be still offered to the Most High, which have by your means been intermitted, meant stopped, because they want war. Who is there that can avoid groans and lamentations? Who is it that can avoid pain and suffering, groans and lamentations, at the amazing change that is made in the city, Jerusalem, since very foreigners and enemies do now correct the impiety? Foreigners and enemies do now correct the disrespect which you have done, while you, who are a Israelite, a Jew, and was educated in our laws, our commandments, and statutes, are become a greater enemy to them than the others. But still, John, this Israelite, it is never dishonorable to repent and amend, ask for forgiveness for what been done wrong, amiss, even at the final extremity, the highest degree. You have an instance before you in Jeconiah. All right, I'll read the note. Our present copies of the Old Testament is lacking this Iconium upon King Jeconiah and Jehoiakim, which it seems was in the Josephus copies. I guess it was removed. It was an example. He was using it as an example when he didn't war. All right. It says, you have an instance, an example before you in Jeconiah, the king of the Jews. If you have a mind to save the city, if you care about saving Jerusalem, the city of David, who when the king of Babylon made war against him, did on his own accord go out of this city before it was taken. Before it was taken, he left the city. He didn't go hide in the bunker like Putin, they're saying that he's doing, or like the Ukrainian president Zelensky, the actor, or like Biden. All right? Afraid of assassination, afraid of whatever that's going to happen to him, instead of being afraid for his city, right? Or his country, right? When you read in the scriptures, Caiaphas said one man should die for the many, right? So they allowed Yeshua to die for the many, right? Which he did die for the redeeming of all Israel and all nations that worship him. All right, so it says, the king of the Jews, if you have a mind to save your city or your country, your Babylon, America, who when the king of Babylon made war against him, did on his own accord. He didn't become a coward. On his own accord, he got out of the city before it was taken, and did undergo a voluntarily captivity, slavery, with his family, that the sanctuary, the temple, might not be delivered up to the enemy, given to the enemy, and that he might not see the house of the Most High set on fire. Babylon is going to be set on fire, right? Satan's uh, uh, what do you want to say? City, uh, bloody city is going to be set on fire. It's going to be melted away. His house, his temple, which is the whore, is going to be set on fire. All right. So King Jeconiah went into voluntary captivity with his family so the sanctuary of the church might not be delivered up to the enemy and that he might not see the house of the Most High set on fire. But Satan, he's going to sacrifice his temple and his people, his prisoners. But anyway, on which account he is celebrated among all the Israelites. All right, he's celebrated among all the Jews in the sacred memorials, and his memory is become immortal and will be conveyed fresh down to our children's children throughout all the ages, throughout all time. On this oracle, you go to page 4, book 4, chapter 6, verse 3, and you'll learn about how what Jeconiah did, right? So this John, ruler of the Jews, whether he was righteous, unrighteous, it's up to you guys to understand that. Okay, so let me get it. This John is an excellent example. He's a sign, an example, a mark in such a time of danger. He's an example when it comes down to such a time of danger. And I dare venture to promise that the Romans shall still forgive you. And take notice that I, who make this exhortation, encouragement to you, am one of your own nation. I'm an Israelite. I who am a Jew. Right? I who am a Israelite. Right? Who's saying white lives matter and saying black lives matter is a fraud that's going to cause trouble. Right? He's standing in the gap, kind of. He says, I encourage you, or I persuade you, and I am one of your own nation. I, who am an Israelite, do make this promise to you, and it will become you to consider. I will hope you think who I am that give you this advice, and whence I am and where I am from, Jerusalem. For while I am alive in the living, in the flesh, I shall never be in such slavery, captivity, as to forego to leave my own countrymen, or forget the commands of our forefathers, the laws of our forefathers. That's what Josephus said. You have indignation at me. You have anger towards me, or again, at me again, and make of a clamor. You make noise at me and reproaches me, cursing at me. Indeed, I cannot deny that I am worthy of worse treatment, because they feel that he's a traitor. Then all this amounts to, he said, I cannot deny that I am worthy of worse treatment than all this amounts to, because in opposition to fate, to being killed, I make this kind invitation to you, and ask to force deliverance. I endeavor to force in deliverance, salvation upon those whom the Most High have condemned. He's saying he's giving salvation to those the Most High condemned, because you're fighting for that temple. When Christ said the temple is inside of you. You are the kingdom of the Most High. But you worried about that church, that temple. I'm going to tear it down. And I already prophesied I'm going to destroy it. But you standing for it. And that's what's happening with Christianity right now. They're going to stand for that. And they're going to get burnt by that A lot of them took the Jim Jones juice because they're blind. The blind is leading the blind. And the pastors don't know no better. They don't want to know no better. Same with the flock. But both will blind will fall in the ditch. That's why it says study to show yourself approved. A workman are not ashamed. Rightly divide the word of truth. For who? For Elijah, Isaiah? No. For the word? No. For the Elohim. Rightly divide the word of truth with fear and trembling for your own soul salvation. Not for a pastor to get up in front of you and lie. The Bible tells you about a false prophet. And you follow him though. And you give him your money. He gets the bag for Pfizer and Moderna and all this stuff. And you got health problems. And you dead. And your family is crying. And you got to be buried. So anyway, let me get back to it. So Josephus, it says, I cannot deny that I'm worthy of worse. He's probably saying I'm almost worthy of death. Worse treatment than all this amounts to. Because in opposition to fate, to dying, I make this kind invitation to you, Israel, and endeavor, I endeavor to force deliverance upon those whom God, it says, Ahia, the Most High, have condemned. He condemned them because destruction of Jerusalem is going to happen and you can't stop it. But they fighting for this temple. And who is there that does not know what the writings of the ancient prophets contain? Do you know what the ancient writings of the prophets contain in them? And particularly that oracle. Right? Israel was given the oracles of the Most High. And we ought to know the oracle of the Most High, which is just, which is right and true, now going to be fulfilled upon this miserable city, the city of David, Jerusalem, the holy city. For they foretold that this city should be then taken. This city's going to be taken. So what do you think about Babylon? It's going to be taken. America, the city built on blood and slavery, it's going to be taken just like Mizraim. Egypt, torn down to the foundation. All right. That oracle, again, it can be found in book 4, chapter 6, paragraph 3. The oracle which is just. It is just and true. It's holy. And is now going to be fulfilled upon this miserable city. For they foretold that this city should be taken. The prophets did. The oracles of God, which is Israel. When somebody shall begin the slaughter of his own countrymen. What did Christ say in Matthew 24? There could be nation against nation. Democrat, Republican. All right? And they both not for America. You need a new party. The party of the Most High. And then you'll be able to have a party. You ain't going to have no party. You're going to have sorrow and sadness. Right? Two birds of the same coin. All right? Right versus left. Unvaccinated versus the vaccinated. Man versus woman. When Adam and Eve were made, well, Eve was made from Adam, and they supposed to help each other. They supposed to work together. And now, the garden ain't Eden no more. It's hell, it's Babylon, it's confusion, it's chaos. Because men and women ain't working together to bring forth children and work the land and praise the Creator on high. Everything was good in Eden. The animals talked to you. You could talk to the animals. You ruled over the animals. You ruled over your wife. Right? You had children. You be fruitful and multiply. Now it's death because you have held onto death's side. Back to Josephus. And it says, and who is there that does not know what the writings of the ancient prophets contain in them? And particularly that oracle which is just not now being fulfilled upon this miserable city. For they foretold that this city shall be taken. Jeremiah. Babylon shall be taken. Arrows shall be shot into Babylon. Jeremiah 51. When somebody shall begin the slaughter of his own countrymen, when Israel start killing Israel. Well, some will say, well, black man is killing blacks. Yeah. And not all Israel is Israel. You're going to have Israelites killing Israelites because of the word. A man's enemy will be his own household. A man's foes will be of his own household. I'm here to put the mother-in-law against the father-in-law, the son-in-law against the daughter-in-law. How's that going to happen? About what you believe about Christ. People rather obey religion, rather obey man than the Most High. They believe religion. They don't read the word. They don't do the word. James said you got to be, which is the brother of Christ, Yeshua, Jesus Christ. He said you got to be a hearer and a doer of the word. Obedience is better than sacrifice. A lot of people rather make sacrifice to get what they want. All I got to do is that. Oh, that's dead. This dead. He said I'd rather obedience. Obey my voice. Obey the Creator. Anyway, when they start killing his own countrymen, we're finna see it. And are not both the city and the entire temple now full of the dead bodies of your own countrymen? It is the Most High, therefore, it is the Most High himself who is bringing on this fire. The Most High is going to bring this fire. It's going to be heavenly fire. It's going to be nuclear fire. To purge that city and temple by means of the what? The Romans. Oh, so the Most High used the belt again. It's the Romans. Oh, because y'all doing all this evil in America, in these cities that are ruled by the others, right? And the Most High had the others, the Romans, allow you to bring the daily sacrifice and do all these things, but you want to revolt. You want to do a holdout on feeding the Most High his sacrifices, doing his holy days, keeping his Sabbaths, obeying his voice, his law, statute, commandments. The heathen was more just and honorable than our people. In this book, in the details account, it says the Romans, who to this very time take care to have our laws observed. They set up laws for you to be able to worship the Most High and do your daily sacrifices and this and that. Right? But you stopped it. I'm not saying they didn't have a hand in it, but we made it worse. So let's see this Romans note. Both here and in many places elsewhere speak so that it must be evident he was fully satisfied that the Most High was on the Roman side. I am too. Because you weren't keeping the commands of the Most High. It made use of them now for the destruction of the wicked nation of the Jews. Those that were doing evil the unrighteous Israelites, which was for certain the true state of this matter, as the prophet Daniel first and our Savior himself afterwards had clearly foretold. All right, that Jerusalem's destruction was going to be at hand. All right, so yeah, Josephus was standing on the righteous side. That's why you're supposed to stand with truth no matter what. Your family ain't doing what's the right and true. You can't be on their side because they wrong. They that's your family. I'm just on their side. That's respect their person. Are they keeping the law, statute, commandments? Who are my mother and father? Those that keep the law, statute, commandments. That's what Christ said. He said, I'd rather have you hot or cold. If you love me, you got to obey me rather than your mother and father. You got to love me more than your mother and father. Yeah. There's going to be a line drawn in the sand. You're going to be with the righteous and the righteous Elohim angels, or you're going to be with the seraphims and the fiery serpent angels and the Nephilim over there with the demons. Who you going to be with? You're going to be in hell, you're going to be in heaven. You decide. You make your own choice. And this is what Israel did. They made their own choice. How you going to go against what the Most High said? He said Jerusalem going to be destroyed. What you trying to keep the temple for? Anyway, these temples do got dead bodies in them right now. They got live people that are alive in these churches, and they're dead. All right. So again, it says, when somebody will begin the slaughtering, the killing of his own countrymen, right? Kind of like infighting, civil war, racism. It's gonna happen. One realm against another realm. One people against another people. Christ said it. Nation versus nation. People versus people. Country versus country. A house divided will not stand. And are not both the city and the entire temple now full of dead bodies? Yes, right now. Full of dead bodies. People eating pork. People breaking the law. People not repenting. People not keeping the holy days. Dead bodies in these churches. Full of dead bodies of your countrymen. It is the Most High, therefore, it is the Most High, Ahia himself, who is bringing, Yah himself, bringing on this fire to purge the city. He's going to what? Purge, clean the city. His cleaning the city is different, it's with fire. First time he purged the world was with water. This time is with fire. But he's going to purge this city and temple by means of the Romans. Yeah, he's going to use the Edomites, Amalek, those that say they're Jews and are not, and is going to pluck up this city, which is full of your pollutions. It's full of what? Your pollutions. You the salt of the earth, but you teaching this Roman over here how to twerk. You the salt of the earth, but you worshiping other gods. You the salt of the earth, but you making pornos. You the salt of the earth, but you committing idolatry. You the salt of the earth, but you doing Santa Maria. You the salt of the earth, but you doing voodoo. You the salt of the earth, but sports is your god. You the salt of the earth, but you love movies. You the salt of the earth, but you don't worship your Elohim, so their Elohim's gonna whoop your ass. You're gonna purge. He's gonna clean with a refiner soap. His fire is hotter than the devil's. Hades. All right. A whole different type of fire. All right. So he's going to use the Romans, and they're going to pluck up this city, which is full of your pollutions. And the Romans, Are the Edomites and all that. They're blessed with the sword. So yeah, they're gonna get it in with their militaries and all that because the city is full with your pollutions. He's seeing his children being gay, transgender, having sex changes, getting butt lifts, doing drugs. He's seeing his people destroyed. And he's like, I might as well destroy them and make a new people. I can make these rocks my people. And that's why we got to cry out, because the rocks will start talking and give praise and honor to the Most High. We got to share and give this information out. We got to warn the people. He said, warn the people from me. The Most High is terrible to the children of men. As Josephus spoke these words with groans and tears in his eyes, he was crying because now he's a traitor. He's a devil. Then he got the white man or whatever man behind him, the other nation man, saying, you need to do this. Your life is at stake if you don't tell your people this. You need to tell them. And he's caught in the middle. So as Josephus spoke these words with groans and tears in his eyes, he was speaking in the Hebrew. His voice was intercepted by sobs. However, the Romans could not but pity the affliction he was under. They were sad about, I guess, whatever he was under, and wondered at his conduct. But for John and those that were with him, they were but the more exasperated against the Romans. They were more upset against the Romans. Now you got one of our fellow Israelites standing with you, talking about he wearing a MAGA hat, and I'm using Kanye West's example right now, only person I could use. You talk about he like Trump and this and that. He a coon. Right? So they got even more mad against the Romans on this account and were desirous to get Josephus also into their power. And if they would have got him into their hands, they gonna kill him. Still did that discourse influence a great many of the better sort, and truly some of them were so afraid of the guards of the Romans sent by the seditious. Okay, so truly some of them were so afraid of the guards sent by the seditious, the guards, that they stayed where they were. They didn't even move. They were so afraid of the camp leaders and all of that, they didn't even want to move. But still were satisfied that both they and the city were doomed to destruction. So they didn't even care. They said, well, we'll just stand here and watch the city be destroyed, and we'll be destroyed too. Some also there were who, watching for a proper opportunity, some Israelites were waiting for the right chance when they might quietly get away and run to the Romans side, of whom were the high priest Joseph and Jesus, not Christ, and of the sons of the high priest 3, whose father was Ishmael, who was beheaded in Cyrene, and 4 sons of Matthias, as also one son of the other Matthias. This is probably Maccabees, who ran away after his father's death. And who and whose father was slain by Simon, the son of Gorgoras, with 3 of his sons, as I have already related. Many also of the other nobility went over to the Romans, together with the high priests. All right, so let me read that note. It says, Josephus had before told us, the 4th son of Matthias ran away to the Romans before his father and brother died, and after it, as here, the former account is in a probability that the truest, for had not the 4th son escaped before the others were caught and put to death, he had been caught and put to death with them. Okay, so even when you ran to their side, oh, I'm gonna go over to the Republicans, I'm gonna go to the Democrats, they was killing them. All right, it didn't matter. Sounds like the jab to me. All right. Now Caesar not only received these men very kindly in other respects, but knowing they would not willingly live after the laws of other nations, other people, he called them to Gophona and desired them to remain there for the present, for the time, and told them that when he was gotten clear of this war, after the war, he would restore each of them to their possessions again, their houses. These are the dumb celebrities that take bribes, and Israelites that take bribes that believe these Romans. So they cheerfully retired to that small city, which was allowed at them, was given them, without fear of any danger. But as they did not appear, some of them didn't come. The seditious gave out again that these deserters were slain, killed by the Romans. Oh, so they said that they were killed by the Romans, but they weren't, which was done. Oh, well, they were killed in order to deter the rest from running away by fear of the like treatment. This trick of theirs succeeded now for a while, as did the like trick before, for the rest were hereby deterred from deserting, escaping by fear of the like treatment, being killed. However, when Titus had recalled those men from Gophena, he gave orders that they should go round the wall together with Josephus and show themselves to the people, upon which a great many fled to the Romans. These men also got in a great number together and stood before the Romans and asked the seditious, with groans and tears in their eyes in the first place, to receive the Romans openly into the city of Jerusalem, and to save their own place of residence again. But that if they would not agree to such proposal, that they would at least depart out of the temple, leave the temple, and save the holy house of their own use. For that the Romans would not venture to set the sanctuary on fire, but under the most pressing need, they would set it on fire. Yet did the seditious, the rioters, the revolters, still more and more contradict them, use propaganda, say lies, and while they cast loud and bitter reproaches, curses upon these deserters, they also set the engines for throwing of darts, to technology for throwing darts and javelins and stones upon the sacred gates of the temple, at due distance from one another, insomuch that all the space round about within the temple might be compared to a burying ground. So great was the number of the dead bodies in the temple, as might the holy house itself be compared to a citadel. Accordingly, these men rushed upon upon holy places and their armor that were otherwise unreproachable, and that while their hands were yet warm with blood of their own people, they killed their own people. See, not all Israel is Israel, which they had shed. Now they proceeded to such great transgressions, sins, that the very same indignation which the Jews would naturally have against Romans, had they been guilty of such abuse against them, the Israelites, the Romans now had against Jews for their disrespect in regard to their own religious customs, practice. Now indeed, they broke their laws. Now indeed, there were none of the Roman soldiers who did not look with a sacred horror upon the holy house and adore it. and wished that the robbers would repent before their miseries became incurable. Now Titus was deeply troubled with this state of things, and corrected John and his party, and said to them, "Have not you, vile wretch, that you are by our permission put upon this partition wall?" All right. Of this partition wall separating Jews and Gentiles with its pillars and inscriptions. All right. All right. Before the sanctuary, have not you been allowed to put up the pillars thereto belonging at due distance, and on it engraved in Greek and in your own letters this prohibition that no foreigner should go beyond the wall? Have not we given you leave to kill such as go beyond the wall of the Gentiles, though he were a Roman? And what do you do now, Israel, you pernicious villains? Pernicious villains! Why do you trample upon dead bodies in the temple, the church? And why do you pollute this holy house with the blood both of foreigners and Jews themselves? I appeal to the gods of my own country and to every god that ever had any regard to this place. For I do not suppose it to be now regarded by any of them, respected. I also appeal to my own army and to those Jews that are now with me, and even to you yourselves, that I do not force you to defile this sanctuary. And if you will be change the place whereon you will fight, no Roman shall either come near your sanctuary or offer an affront to it. No, I will endeavor, I'll ask to preserve you, to save you, keep you, your holy house, your temple, whether you will or not. In the notes, that these seditious Jews were the direct reason of their own destruction and of the conflagration of their city and temple, and that Titus eagerly and constantly worked to save both, and is here and everywhere most evident in Josephus. All right. I don't know how much more we should get on it, but you know, it's some good stuff there. Um, um, and Josephus explained these things, for the mouth of Caesar, both the robbers and the tyrant thought that these encouragements proceeded from Titus' fear and not from his goodwill to them, and grew insolent upon it. But when Titus saw that these men were neither to be moved by commiseration towards themselves, nor had any concern upon them to the holy house, respect, to have the holy house saved, he proceeded unwillingly to go on again with the war against them. He could not indeed bring all his army against them, the place was so narrow. But choosing 30 soldiers of the most valiant, brave out of every 100, and committing 1,000 each tribune, and making Cerilius their commander-in-chief, he gave orders that they should attack the guards of the temple about the 9th hour of the night. But as he was now in his armor and preparing to go, by reason of the greatness of the danger and what the commanders suggested to them, for they said that he would do more by sitting above in the tower of Antonia as a dispenser of rewards to those soldiers that signalized themselves in the fight, then by coming down and hazarding his own person in the forefront of them, for that they would all fight stoutly with Caesar, while Caesar looked upon them. With this advice, Caesar complied and said that the only reason he had for such compliance with the soldiers was this, that he might be able to judge of their courageous actions, and that no brave soldier might lie concealed and miss of his reward, and no cowardly soldier might go unpunished, but that he might himself be an eyewitness and able to give evidence of all that was done, who was to be the disposer of punishments and rewards to them. So he sent soldiers about their work at an hour aforementioned, while he went unto himself to a higher place in the tower of Batonia, where he might see what was done. and there waited with impatience to see the event. And so we can go on and on about the overthrow and the destruction of Jerusalem. It was sad, it was horrible, it was terrible what happened. It was very violent, it was very brutal. All right. It was very brutal, you guys. I'll just read some of the, if I can. Let me see. Concerning a stratagem that was devised by the Jews by which they burnt many of the Romans with another description of the city. Oh, I'm sorry, another description of the terrible famine that was in the city. So there was going to be a terrible famine in the city where they start eating each other, eating gold, and people cutting gold out of their bodies. You know, all of that. Turning on each other in the city. When the banks were completed and the battering rams brought and could do nothing, Titus gave orders to set fire to the gates of the temple, and no long time after which the holy house itself was burnt down, even against his consent. All right. The great distress the Jews were in upon the conflagration of the holy house concerning a false prophet and the signs that preceded the destruction. We're going to go there in the next video. All right. 654. And so I just want to read this because there's supposed to be a great prince to rise in Judea. Okay. So it says in chapter 6, book 6, chapter 6, paragraph 4. Now, if anyone consider these things, he will find that the Most High takes care of mankind by always possible, and foreshows to our race, the Israelites, what is for their preservation, their safety. But that man died by those miseries which they madly and voluntarily bring upon themselves. Concentration camps, martial law, trusting in science, death, sickness. All right. For the Jews, by demolishing the tower of Antonia, had made their temple foursquare, while at the same time they had it written in their sacred oracles that then should their city be taken, defeated, as well as their holy house, when once their temple should become foursquare. But now, what did most alleviate them in undertaking this war was an ambiguous oracle that was also found in the sacred writing, how about that time one from the country should become a governor of the habitable earth, the whole earth. The Jews took this prediction to belong to themselves in particular, and many of the wise men were thereby deceived in their determination. They were fooled, they were tricked. Now this oracle certainly denoted the government of Vespasian, and who was appointed emperor in Judea, and also Josephus foretold of it. However, it is not possible for men to avoid fate, what will be, although they see it beforehand. A wise man see the destruction coming and they prepare, but that don't mean you're going to make it through. You'll make it through only with the Most High through Jacob's trouble. However, it is not possible for man to avoid fate, what will be the future, although they see it beforehand. But these men interpreted some of these signals according to their own pleasure, their own emotion. And some of them they utterly despised, they utterly hated um, um, what they interpreted until their madness was demonstrated, was shown, right? Both by the taking of their city, by seeing the taking, the destruction of their city, and their own destruction. You won't believe it until you see it. Just like people not, not baptizing. Flesh and blood can't enter in the kingdom of heaven. But what happens when you get there and you can't get in? What happens when um, you find out that all nations could be saved and you not getting in? So some things are going to come to pass, and you're not going to be able to get around that. All right, and it's just sad. So, like it says, however, it is not possible for man to avoid fate, although they see it beforehand. Right? We know Babylon's going to fall. We can see it beforehand. All right. But these men interpret some of these signals according to their own way, their own mindset, their own dream, their own emotions. And some of them, they utterly hate the prophecies or what's going to come to pass until their madness was demonstrated. Going against the prophets. It's madness. And it will be demonstrated that you didn't know what the word said. Both by the taking of their city and their own destruction by their own hands. Not keeping the law, statute, commandments, not keeping the holy days, taking the jab, trusting the science, trusting in man rather than God. So we should obey the Most High rather than man. Chapter 6. How the Romans carried their ensigns to the temple and made joyful acclamations to Titus. The speech that Titus made to the Jews when they made prayers for mercy. What reply they made thereto Titus, and how that reply moved Titus's indignation against them. All right? Now you want to repent? You can even go to chapter 7. What afterwards befell the seditious, the rioters, the revolters, when they had done a great deal of mischief and suffered many misfortunes, as also how Caesar became master of the upper city. How Caesar, in chapter 8, raised banks round about the upper city, and when they were completed, gave orders for the machines to be brought. He then possessed himself of the whole city. Chapter 9. What injunction Caesar gave when he was come within the city, and the number of the slaves, the captives, and those that died in the attack, as also concerning those that escaped into the subterranean caverns. We went underground. That's interesting. Let the rocks fall upon us. They're going to go underground. Reap what you sow, right? It's going to be their turn. Among whom were the tyrants Simon and John themselves. Chapter 10. That whereas the city of Jerusalem had been 5 times taken formerly, this was the second time of its desolation. And Josephus tells a brief account of that history. Book 7, chapter 1. This concerning the interval about 3 years from the taking of Jerusalem by Titus to the sedition of the Jews at Cyrene. How the entire city of Jerusalem was demolished, excepting 3 towers, and how Titus commended his soldiers in a speech made to them and distributed rewards to them, and then dismissed many of them. So Titus is out here giving rewards and crowns. When, see, Christ is going to come and give rewards and crowns. This should be talked about. How they were given crowns and celebrating. We're going to be celebrating when Christ gives us our crown. All right? And we have a victory. Okay? And listen more. Keep on going. You need to get in, start reading some of Josephus. So the next part of this, I'm going to show you the signs that Jerusalem is going to fall. And it's important that we understand those signs. Part 2 coming.